A man's fist slammed into my wife's face. It was the middle of a bright Texas morning, the kind of sunlight that makes every dewdrop glisten, and for a moment it felt like nothing could go wrong. But something did. The man wore a dark vest with bold letters stitched across the chest. Compliance. She wasn't looking for a fight, not that morning, not ever. All she wanted was to tend to the small patch of weeds near our rose bushes, the simple, ordinary chore that made her mornings feel grounded, peaceful. My wife, Emily, is the kind of woman who balances two worlds effortlessly, grading essays with one hand, stirring spaghetti sauce with the other. That morning, she was crouched in the dirt, her white gardening shirt smudged with soil, hair pulled back in a loose braid, the sunlight catching her freckles. Every motion was slow, intentional, calm, until she saw the notice. A neon red slip of paper, taped crudely to our fence, screamed "Violation" in bold letters. Fence too tall, flag display unauthorized, fines escalating in 72 hours. She read it twice, then pulled out her phone. "We're not doing this blind," she muttered. That's Emily, her teacher instinct kicking in. Document first, argue later. 15 years of marriage to a Navy man had taught her the same rule. Evidence keeps bullies honest. And that's when they arrived.
They came across our lawn like they owned it. Two men in tactical vests, moving with the swagger of people who believed intimidation could replace authority. The first, Vince, was built like a nightclub bouncer, a mountain of a man, but his confidence faltered with every nervous bead of sweat that ran down his temple. His vest strained at the seams, and even the zipper seemed to protest under the tension of his bulk. The second, Tony, had the kind of muscles people admire from afar but never want to spar with. Yet there was something sloppy about him, the crooked badge dangling from his chest, the way he shifted his weight like he'd been taught to fight but never really had. "Ma'am, stop recording enforcement action immediately," Vince barked. His voice tried to command authority, but it landed somewhere between a mall cop and a karaoke tough guy. Emily didn't flinch. She never did. She held her phone steady, her hand unshaking, her calm teacher voice rising only slightly. "This is my property," she said evenly. "You're on camera." That should have been the end of it, the moment of truth, the line between lawful and lawless clearly drawn. But Tony's jaw tightened, his fist curled. 2 steps later, the sound of his punch cracked through the morning like a gunshot. Emily's head snapped sideways. Her phone flew into the grass, screen shattering but still recording, capturing every second. She stumbled, one hand flying to her cheek. Blood blossomed across her skin, glinting in the sun. She didn't cry, didn't scream, but her eyes went wide with shock. Who expects to be punched over a fence notice? The neighborhood froze. Curtains twitched. Mrs. Rodriguez's garden hose went limp. Somewhere, a dog barked once and fell silent. Everyone heard it. Everyone knew something had crossed a line. And then I saw red. 15 years of marriage, 3 combat deployments, and I'd never seen Emily hurt like that. My chest burned with a fury white-hot, blinding, but steady. This was the kind of rage that doesn't shake hands, it breaks them. The screen door slammed behind me. Just the sound of it drew attention. I didn't need a uniform, just a faded Marine Corps t-shirt, jeans, bare feet, but my posture spoke for me. Balanced weight, square shoulders, controlled breathing. The air seemed to thicken. Vince and Tony stiffened, their swagger evaporated like morning dew. "I'm a Navy SEAL," I said evenly, letting the fact land, not shouting, not bragging. "You just assaulted my wife." Vince sneered. Bad decision. But I saw the flicker of doubt. Tony's fists wavered. I shifted my tone to the one I used overseas. Calm, cold, final. "Stand down, hands where I can see them. Last warning." The words hung in the hot Texas air like a blade drawn in slow motion.
Instead of surrendering, Vince charged. He came at me like a linebacker chasing glory, all bulk, all speed, no strategy. I pivoted instinctively, years of drills making my movement automatic. His shoulder missed me by a mile. Momentum carried him forward and his boots caught the edge of the porch step. The next sound was sickening, wood cracking, a grunt of pain, then silence as he hit the ground. Blood streamed from his nose, staining his vest and the grass beneath him. Tony, seeing his partner sprawled, decided that brute force was his solution. Fists flying, he threw wild haymakers, each swing telegraphing weakness and panic. I ducked once, twice, sidestepped, and gravity did the rest. He toppled into our sprinkler system, the high-pressure jet striking his jaw with a sickening snap. Drool, water, and incoherent sounds spilled from his mouth. All in less than 30 seconds. Both men were down. My wife's phone lay in the grass, cracked but still recording. Every moment, the swing, the punch, the stumble, the blood, was preserved. Emily picked up the phone, wincing at the swelling on her cheek, but her voice remained steady. "That's my wife," she whispered, "stronger than most men I've fought beside." The neighborhood was awake now. Agnes peeked through her lace curtains, iPad in hand, filming like it was her life's mission. Carl from next door leaned on his wrench, staring in disbelief. Mrs. Rodriguez was frozen with her watering can, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. The scene had transformed from a backyard confrontation into undeniable, irrefutable evidence. Vince groaned, clutching his face. "You broke my nose," he said, his voice cracking like a teenager discovering puberty for the second time. The vest zipper finally gave way, exposing a t-shirt underneath that read, "World's Greatest Dad." The irony stung more than the punch. Tony tried to speak about arrests, but his jaw betrayed him. His threats turned into incomprehensible slush. A man who minutes ago had exuded intimidation now looked like a toddler who had bitten his tongue. I didn't gloat, I didn't strike again. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "This is Jack Harper at 2147 Magnolia Drive," I said, calmly, my voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through me. "Two men assaulted my wife on private property. Both need medical attention." Even as I hung up, something caught my eye. Vince's phone lay in the grass, screen glowing. A text notification pulsed across the cracked display. "Boss lady, use force if needed. J. Timestamp, 2 minutes before the assault." Emily leaned closer, her camera catching the message. Her swollen cheek trembled, but her eyes were sharp. "Got it," she whispered. The sirens were wailing in the distance now, growing louder with each heartbeat. Our neighbors whispered, eyes darting between the bleeding enforcers and the glowing phone. Someone ordered this. Someone thought assaulting my wife over a fence notice was a strategy. Emily brushed her fingers against mine. Her grip was soft, steady, determined. "That's our first lead." For the first time since the punch, a cold smile spread across my face. This wasn't about fence violations anymore. This was war. By the time the sirens cut through Magnolia Drive, our quiet suburban street looked like a battlefield. Vince curled on the grass, groaning through his blood-soaked vest. Tony sat against the sprinkler post, jaw skewed, drooling. Sprinkler water sprayed arcs behind him, glittering in the Texas sun like a cruel spotlight. Emily, bruised but unbroken, kept filming. Neighbors now gathered, some filming, others whispering, but no one moved to help the men who had just assaulted a teacher in her own yard. Then came the voice I'd been waiting for. "Jesus, Jack, what the hell happened here?" Ray Delgado, my neighbor 2 houses down, ex-cop, 25 years on the force, now retired, strode across the lawn in cargo shorts and a Hawaiian shirt. His eyes, sharp and unflinching, took in the scene. Emily's cheek, the men on the ground,
evidence lying everywhere. "They leave more evidence than a bank robber with a hangover," he muttered, scanning Vince's glowing phone. The paramedics arrived, strapping Vince to a stretcher as he wailed. Tony tried to resist, but his jaw had other plans. And just like that, what had begun as a simple backyard dispute escalated into something much bigger. A planned, deliberate act, caught on camera, witnessed by the entire neighborhood.
Once the immediate chaos had settled, Emily and I had only moments to process what had just happened. Our neighbors were gathered in clusters, whispering and pointing, some still filming, some frozen like deer in headlights. The air was thick with the scent of blood, grass, and adrenaline. Magnolia Drive had transformed into a stage where every subtle movement felt like evidence. Agnes Porter, our widow neighbor, clutched her iPad like a shield, filming every detail as though documenting the trial of the century. Carl, next door, leaned against his garage doorway, hands trembling slightly as he tried to appear composed. Mrs. Rodriguez's watering can hung forgotten at her side. Silence had descended, punctuated only by Vince's groans and Tony's unintelligible muttering. I crouched beside Emily, brushing a strand of hair from her dirt-smudged face. "You okay?" I asked, my voice low but firm. The weight of my presence meant to reassure as much as command. She touched her cheek, swelling, already forming a deep purple bruise. "I'm fine," she said, but her eyes, wide and alert, betrayed the shock. "But they had orders. Someone told them to hit me." I nodded, my jaw tightening. I saw the message. Vince's phone lay nearby, its screen cracked but still glowing. "Boss lady, use force if needed. J." Time-stamped minutes before the assault. Emily picked it up, fingers brushing over the screen. "They weren't acting on their own," she whispered. "This wasn't random. This was planned." That's when Ray stepped forward, his presence commanding despite the casual Hawaiian shirt and cargo shorts. "Community Compliance Group," he muttered, reading the label on their vests. "Private contractors, no real authority, hired muscle for someone trying to enforce their own rules." I exchanged a glance with Emily. "Jennifer Allen," I said quietly. "The HOA president, the woman who had been terrorizing our neighborhood with violation slips, fines, and petty intimidation." Ray's eyes narrowed. "Looks like she's stepping up her game." The paramedics loaded Vince and Tony into the ambulance, their tactical vests now grotesque symbols of their failed intimidation. Officers would follow shortly, but the digital evidence was already in our hands. Emily's phone, Vince's glowing screen, Agnes's filming. Emily's hand brushed mine, steady despite the throbbing pain. "We've got proof now, hard proof." The realization hit both of us simultaneously. This wasn't about fence height, flags, or petty fines anymore. This was orchestration, premeditated intimidation, a coordinated strike meant to instill fear. And now, thanks to Emily's instincts and Agnes's documentation, we held the first pieces of the puzzle. Ray scanned the scene, his trained eyes catching details the rest of us might miss. "She's not acting alone," he voiced low. "Phase 2, it's already in motion." Emily's eyes met mine, a fire igniting despite the pain on her face. "Then we stop it," she whispered, "no matter what." The sirens grew louder as real law enforcement approached, but the neighborhood remained on edge. Magnolia Drive wasn't just a street anymore. It was a front line. Every glance, every whisper, every camera pointed at our yard told a story of betrayal, violence, and control. And at that moment, I realized something crucial. Jennifer Allen had fired the first real shot, but we were ready to retaliate, not with fists, but with evidence, strategy, and resolve. By the time the sirens cut through Magnolia Drive, the neighborhood had transformed into a scene from a battlefield. Vince lay sprawled on the grass, clutching his bloodied nose, his tactical vest a mangled costume of authority. Tony slumped against the sprinkler post, jaw skewed, water spraying arcs across his soaked vest in the lawn, drool mixing with the irrigation streams. Emily knelt in the grass, still gripping her phone, lens cracked but relentless, capturing every frame, the swing, the punch, the stumble, the blood. every second a testament to the violence that had been unleashed on her simply for checking a fence height. The neighbors were awake now. Some filmed with their phones, others whispered among themselves, the collective fear palpable. Nobody moved to help the enforcers, who had just proven themselves unworthy of trust or sympathy. Then came the voice we'd been waiting for. "Jesus, Jack, what the hell happened here?" Ray Delgado, my neighbor 2 houses down and a retired cop, strode across the lawn, his presence commanding. Cargo shorts, Hawaiian shirt, but the eyes of someone who'd seen violence, crime, and deceit firsthand. He stopped, taking in Emily's swollen cheek, the 2 men on the ground, the chaos frozen in mid-morning light. "These idiots leave more evidence than a bank robber with a hangover," he muttered, crouching beside us. I handed him Vince's phone, still glowing with the incriminating text, "Boss lady, use force if needed, J." Ray whistled low. "You've got yourself a smoking gun." Paramedics arrived first, strapping Vince to a stretcher as he wailed in agony over his broken nose. Tony tried to resist, but his jaw wouldn't cooperate, the pain and water from the sprinkler having done their work. Then the real officers arrived. Blue and red lights painted the manicured lawns in flashes, officers stepping out, taking one look at Emily's face, and nodding grimly. Assault was clear. Impersonating authority made it worse. Statements were taken, phones collected, video shared. Emily showed her recording. I passed over the glowing phone with the boss lady text. Ray leaned close, voice low so only I could hear. "This is bigger than fines, bigger than HOA rules. Jennifer Allen isn't just managing property, she's orchestrating an intimidation operation." Emily squeezed my hand, voice steady despite her throbbing cheek. "She tracked us. She planned this. This wasn't random." The weight of that hit me hard. The first real shot had been fired, but now the true battlefield was clear. Our family, our neighbors, our entire community. Agnes peeked behind her lace curtains, hands trembling as she clutched her iPad. "I filmed everything," she whispered, eyes wide, relief mixed with fear. Ray scanned the neighborhood, taking in the silent porches, the frozen curtains, the collective tension. This is a calculated move. Someone else is in on it. Phase 2, probably already underway. Emily's fingers brushed mine. "Then we strike back," she whispered. And in that moment, Magnolia Drive wasn't just a street. It was our front line. Our resolve had crystallized. Jennifer Allen had escalated, but we weren't just going to stand by. Evidence, strategy, and community would be our weapons. The sirens drew closer, but so did our determination. Phase 2 would meet resistance, and we would be ready. By the time the ambulance doors slammed shut and the cruisers pulled away, the neighborhood was alive with whispers, questions, and fear. Magnolia Drive had transformed from a quiet suburban street into a front line in a battle no one had signed up for. Emily's swollen cheek still throbbed, but her hands were steady as she reviewed the video one more time. Every frame, a punch, a stumble, a sprawl of blood, was proof. Proof against men who had posed as authority. Proof against Jennifer Allen, who had orchestrated the attack. Ray crossed his arms, eyes sharp and calculating. "Jack, this isn't just HOA business anymore. Whoever sent those men, whoever's behind Jennifer Allen, they're escalating. This was Phase 2, and Phase 3 is already in motion." Agnes Porter, still clutching her envelope of photos and black book pages, shivered as she spoke. "She's tracking people. She's planning. Phase 3, it targets schools." Emily's hand found mine. "Our kids, my students, she's targeting them next." Her voice shook, but there was steel in her tone. "We need to stop her." We moved quickly. Evidence, photos, videos, and digital logs were all sent to law enforcement. Ray made calls to old contacts, ensuring the FBI and local authorities were fully briefed. Every neighbor who could help was enlisted in the community watch. Parents coordinated pickup groups, patrols, and schedules. Not a single detail was left unchecked. The tension was suffocating, but it forged resolve. We weren't just defending property anymore. We were defending lives, and we weren't going to fail. Days later, at the Polk County Courthouse, the full weight of Jennifer Allen's schemes came into focus.
From HOA intimidation and financial manipulation to threats against schools, the courtroom bristled with the gravity of her crimes. Emily's video played on the big screen, Agnes's black book projected in high definition, Greg Lamb's recordings revealing years of coercion and manipulation. Every lie, every threat, every act of intimidation was laid bare. When the verdict came, it was decisive. Guilty on harassment, intimidation, misuse of funds, assault by proxy, and terroristic threats. Jennifer Allen, once untouchable in her meticulously manicured kingdom, was finally held accountable. The courtroom erupted. Relief, vindication, and a collective exhale of months of fear. Emily's hand squeezed mine. It's over, Jack. Finally over. Outside, the neighborhood slowly began to heal. The oppressive weight of control lifted. Neighbors laughed again. Kids ran through sprinklers, and trust began to rebuild. Agnes and Carl, despite their past hesitations, joined in restoring the sense of community. Ray continued as our guide, keeping vigilance where it was needed. Even as peace returned, the shadows of Jennifer's last threats lingered. Cameras, unknown contacts, and traces of her influence reminded us that vigilance was constant. But we were prepared, stronger, and united. Magnolia Drive would never be the same, but for the first time in a long while, it felt safe, free, and alive.